My name is Michael Donovan. I'm 68 years old, and until last year I believed family was the one thing money could never buy. I was wrong. The morning everything changed began like any other. I woke before sunrise, brewed a cup of black coffee, and sat on the porch of the small lakeside house my late wife Eleanor and I had built 35 years earlier. Every nail in that house had a memory. Every wall carried the laughter of birthdays, Christmas, mornings and quiet evenings when we dreamed about growing old together. After Eleanor passed away, the silence became unbearable. The only person I had left was my son, Ryan. For weeks, he visited almost every evening. He brought groceries, asked about my health, and insisted I shouldn't spend my retirement alone. I believed every word. One Friday night, Ryan placed a folder on my dining table. "Dad," he said with a confident smile, "I found an investment opportunity. If you let me manage your retirement fund, I can double it within a year." I looked at him for a long moment. "Ryan," I said quietly, "I spent 40 years earning that money. At my age, I don't need more. I just need peace." His smile faded. "So, you don't trust me?" "It isn't about trust," I replied. "It's about security." He nodded without saying another word, but when he walked out of my house that night, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Greed. 3 days later, I logged into my bank account. The screen refreshed. I blinked, then refreshed it again. Balance, 0.00. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. 40 years of savings. Gone. I called the bank immediately. The representative confirmed every transfer had been approved using my online credentials. "It appears the transaction was authorized, Mr. Donovan." "It wasn't," I whispered. Then my phone rang. "Ryan," I answered immediately. "Dad," he laughed, "before you panic, think of it as an investment. What did you do?" "I borrowed the money. Relax. I'll pay you back after my business takes off." "You stole everything." "No," he replied coldly. "I used family resources." My hands began to shake. "Ryan, that money was all I had." His voice turned icy. "You don't need millions sitting in an account. You're old. I still have a future." The call ended. I stared across the empty living room where Eleanor's favorite chair still stood. For the first time since losing my wife, I cried. Not because of the money, because my own son believed my life no longer mattered. For the next 2 days, I didn't call Ryan again. Instead, I started asking questions, not as a father, but as the man I used to be. Most people knew me as a retired businessman. Very few knew that 22 years earlier, I had quietly become one of the largest private shareholders in Summit National Bank. I had never told Ryan, money changes people. Keeping that secret had protected my family for years. Now, it was about to expose my son. The next morning, I drove to the bank's headquarters. The employees greeted me with surprised smiles. "Good morning, Mr. Donovan." Within minutes, the bank's president, Laura Mitchell, walked into the boardroom. "Mr. Donovan, if you had called, I would have come to your house." I slid a folder across the table. My retirement account was emptied. She read every pages. Her expression changed. This transfer shouldn't have been approved. It was. Someone inside ignored multiple fraud alerts. I looked out the window. "I don't want revenge." She remained silent. "I want the truth." An internal investigation began that same afternoon. Less than 24 hours later, Laura called. "We found something." The mortgage Ryan used to buy his new mansion had been approved by one of our senior loan officers. The problem: Ryan's declared income was barely enough to qualify. Several financial documents had been altered. Someone inside the bank had helped him. I closed my eyes. My own son hadn't just stolen from me. He had committed bank fraud. Laura looked at me carefully. If regulators discover this before we act, it becomes a criminal investigation. I nodded slowly. Do everything by the book. That evening, Ryan posted another picture online. He stood beside a black sports car in front of his mansion. The caption read, "Hard work always pays off." Thousands of people congratulated him. I simply smiled because I knew something he didn't. The investigation had already frozen every account connected to the fraudulent loan. Ryan just didn't know it yet. The following morning, my phone exploded with calls. Ryan, 12 missed calls, then 17. Finally, I answered. "Dad!" His confident voice had disappeared. "The bank froze everything." "I know. There has to be a mistake." There wasn't a mistake when my retirement account became zero. Silence. "Dad, listen. No. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You can fix this." I took a deep breath. For 40 years I worked to build my future. You destroyed it in 5 minutes. Then I hung up. An hour later, Ryan appeared at my front door. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red. For the first time in years, he looked afraid. "Dad, I'm sorry." I looked directly into his eyes. "Are you sorry because you hurt me, or because you got caught?" Ryan couldn't answer. That silence told me everything. Ryan stood on my porch with his head lowered. For the first time since he was a little boy, he looked small. "Dad, please," he whispered. "If the bank reports this, I'll lose everything." I folded my arms. "You should have thought about that before you stole everything I owned." Tears filled his eyes. "I was desperate." "No," I replied calmly. "You were greedy." Before he could answer, another black SUV pulled into my driveway. 2 people stepped out, Laura Mitchell and the bank's legal director. Ryan's face turned white. Laura looked directly at him. "Mr. Donovan, we need you to come with us to answer several questions regarding mortgage fraud and unauthorized financial transfers." Ryan stumbled backward. He looked at me. "Dad, tell them it was a misunderstanding." I said nothing. For 40 years, I had protected him from every mistake, not this one. 3 days later, the investigation uncovered everything. Ryan had convinced a bank employee to approve documents containing false income statements. The same employee had helped him move money from my retirement account using forged authorization records. The employee was fired immediately. Federal investigators opened a case. Ryan's mansion was placed under legal review. Every luxury purchase, the sports car, the designer furniture, even the expensive watch on his wrist, was traced back to stolen money within a week. The court ordered every asset frozen. Ryan was forced to move out of the mansion he had proudly shown the world. The news spread quickly. Friends disappeared overnight. Business partners stopped answering his calls, the people who celebrated his success. The sports car was auctioned. Every luxury item he had bought using stolen money was seized. Most importantly, my retirement fund was fully restored. Every cent. When Laura handed me the final paperwork, she smiled. "Mr. Donovan, your account is exactly where it was before the theft." I thanked her quietly. Money had returned, but something else never would. My son. 3 months passed. Life slowly became quiet again. Every morning I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the lake Eleanor had loved so much. Then one afternoon, someone knocked on my door. It was Ryan, but he wasn't wearing an expensive suit anymore. His beard had grown, his shoulders were slumped. He looked 10 years older. Without saying a word, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Dad, I spent my whole life believing success meant having more than everyone else. I blamed you for saying no because you thought you were standing in the way of my future. I never realized I wasn't stealing your money. I was stealing the last piece of trust our family had left. If you never forgive me, I'll understand. I folded the letter carefully. Come inside. For nearly 2 hours, we talked, not about money, not about the mansion, not about the court. For the first time in years, we spoke honestly. Ryan admitted everything. His friends had pressured him. Social media had convinced him that success meant showing off expensive cars, luxury homes, and designer clothes. He wanted strangers to admire him, even if it meant betraying the people who loved him. A week later, I received another call from Laura Mitchell. The criminal case is almost finished, she said. The judge noticed something unusual. What is it? Ryan refused every opportunity to hide money overseas. Instead, he cooperated fully. He confessed before anyone forced him to. That decision reduced his sentence. The judge also ordered him to complete hundreds of hours of community service, helping elderly victims of financial fraud. Ironically, Ryan would now spend every weekend helping people who had been betrayed, just as he had betrayed me. 6 months later, I visited the community center. Ryan was serving lunch to elderly veterans. He didn't notice me standing in the doorway. I watched quietly. He smiled. He listened. He carried heavy boxes for people who couldn't lift them. For the first time in years, I saw the son I remembered, not the man blinded by greed, the young boy his mother had raised. When he finally saw me, he walked over slowly. I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at him for a long moment, then I placed my hand on his shoulder. Forgiveness isn't something you ask for once. It's something you earn every day. A tear rolled down his face. I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. I believed him. 1 year later, I sold the old lakeside house, not because of painful memories, but because Eleanor had always wanted me to keep moving forward, with part of my retirement savings. I created the Eleanor Donovan Family Trust. The trust helped widows, retired workers, and elderly people who had become victims of financial scams. Hundreds of families received help during its first year, every Christmas. Ryan volunteered there. He never asked for recognition. He simply worked, quietly, patiently, humbly. As I stood beside Eleanor's grave one last time that winter, I smiled. My love, we finally found peace. The wind moved gently through the trees. Some people believe revenge is watching someone lose everything. I learned something different. Real justice is giving someone the chance to become the person they should have been all along. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance a parent can leave behind isn't money. It's the opportunity to choose honesty over greed. 6 months after Ryan began rebuilding his life, I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. One rainy Tuesday morning, Laura Mitchell called again. Michael, we found something during the audit. What is it? It isn't about Ryan. My heart skipped a beat. It's about Eleanor. I gripped the phone tighter. My wife, before she passed away, she opened a private safety deposit box. I froze. I never knew. Neither did anyone else. The next morning I walked into Summit. National Bank. Laura placed a small steel box on the table. The box could only be opened after your wife's death. She handed me the key. With trembling hands, I unlocked it. Inside was a handwritten letter, a flash drive, and a sealed envelope marked, "For Michael, when he finally needs the truth." Tears blurred my vision. I opened the letter. My dearest Michael, if you're reading this, I'm no longer beside you. I know you better than anyone. I know that if Ryan ever loses his way, you'll blame yourself. Don't. Love isn't measured by how many times you rescue someone. It's measured by whether you teach them to stand after they fall. There's something else you never knew. 20 years ago, your business partner tried to steal the company. I secretly bought his shares to protect everything you built. Those shares are still yours. I've hidden every document inside this box. One day they'll belong to whoever proves. Don't. Love isn't measured by how many times you rescue someone. It's measured by whether you teach them to stand after they fall. There's something else you never knew. 20 years ago, your business partner tried to steal the company. I secretly bought his shares to protect everything you built. Those shares are still yours. I've hidden every document inside this box. One day, they'll belong to whoever proves. Ryan came to visit. I placed the documents on the table. He stared at them. Dad, you inherited all this? No. I smiled softly. Your mother left me a choice. Ryan looked confused. A choice? She said the fortune should belong only to the person who proves they deserve it. Ryan lowered his eyes. I don't deserve it. For the first time, I saw complete honesty. No excuses, no lies, no greed, just regret. I nodded. That's the first time you've ever spoken like a man. Ryan quietly stood. I don't want the money. I just want my father back. I walked across the room and hugged my son. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Sometimes, the richest moment in life. After Ryan left that evening, I sat alone in the living room staring at Eleanor's letter. For the first time since losing her, I smiled. Not because she had left behind $40 million, but because she had left behind wisdom that money could never buy. The next morning, I called Laura Mitchell. I've made my decision. What would you like to do, Mr. Donovan? I don't want the fortune for myself. There was a long silence. I'm going to use it to help people. 3 months later, the Eleanor Donovan Foundation officially opened its doors. Its mission was simple: help elderly people who had been abandoned by their families, provide legal aid to victims of financial fraud, pay medical bills for retired workers who had spent their lives serving others. Within the first year, the foundation helped more than 3,000 families. Every success story reminded me of Eleanor. She always believed wealth meant nothing unless it changed someone else's life. Ryan volunteered every weekend. He never asked to manage the money. He never asked for a salary. Instead, he drove elderly people to doctor's appointments. He repaired broken homes. He delivered food to widows who had no one left. One afternoon, an old veteran shook Ryan's hand. Son, thank you. Ryan smiled. He taught me that the strongest people aren't the richest. They're the ones who make things right. I stood nearby, listening. Tears filled my eyes, not because Ryan had finally become successful, but because he had finally become kind. On my 70th birthday, Ryan arrived carrying a small wooden box. Inside was an old pocket watch. It had belonged to my father. I found it while cleaning the attic, Ryan said. I was going to sell it years ago. He looked down. I'm glad I didn't. I held the watch tightly. Some things can never be replaced. Trust, family, time. That evening, we visited Eleanor's grave together. Ryan knelt quietly. I'm sorry, Mum. I spent years chasing money when all I ever needed was this family. The wind rustled through the trees. It felt as if Eleanor had heard every word. As we walked back to the car, Ryan looked at me. Dad, yes? Thank you for giving me a second chance. I smiled. I didn't give you a second chance. You earned it. Years later, people often ask me what happened to the man who stole his father's retirement fund. I always gave the same answer. He disappeared. They looked confused. Then I smiled. The selfish man disappeared, and a better son took his place, because revenge may satisfy your anger. But forgiveness, when it is earned, can change a life forever. 2 months later, the courtroom was silent. Ryan sat at the defense table, unable to look in my direction. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, this wasn't a simple family disagreement. This was a carefully planned financial crime. He displayed bank statements on the courtroom screen. Every transfer, every forged signature, every fake document. The evidence was overwhelming. Ryan's lawyer stood. Mr. Donovan made terrible mistakes, but he has cooperated completely. The judge turned toward me. Mr. Michael Donovan, would you like to make a statement? I slowly stood. The entire courtroom became silent. I didn't come here because I hate my son. I came because one lie always becomes another. If nobody stops it, it destroys every family it touches. I don't want revenge. I want responsibility. The judge nodded quietly. Outside the courthouse, Ryan's wife, Jessica, confronted him. You promised we'd keep the mansion. Ryan stared at her. It's over. Jessica shook her head. No. You got caught. You ruined my life. Ryan looked shocked. Our life? Jessica laughed bitterly. I married success, not failure. She removed her wedding ring, dropped it into his hand, then walked away without looking back. Ryan stood alone on the courthouse steps. Everything he chased, money, status, luxury, had disappeared in one afternoon, a week later. The bank employee who helped Ryan requested a private meeting. He sat across from me. Tears filled his eyes. I'm sorry. I knew those signatures were fake. So why did you approve them? Ryan promised me $50,000. I thought nobody would ever know. He lowered his head. I destroyed my career. My marriage ended. My children are ashamed of me. I looked at him calmly. Greed always sends the bill. It just never tells you when. He quietly nodded. I've learned that now. That evening, I opened an old photo album. The first picture showed Eleanor standing beside a small, unfinished building. She smiled at the camera. One evening, she had told me, Michael, if we ever become wealthy, I don't want a bigger house. I want to build a place where elderly people who have no family can still feel loved. At the time, we never had enough money. Now, her dream finally could become reality. I looked toward the window. I'll finish what you started.